Morning, Bill.
Good day, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. And look, the sun's shining, the birds are singing, yeah, and we're alive.
Well, I'm looking out there and that lawn's dormant because we're in my lounge room today. The lawn's dormant, but I think I better polish up the lawnmower as the weather improves. Yeah.
So who's today's guest, Bill?
Well, I'm delighted today to be talking to Robert Clifford. I first met Robert at the Irish Australian Chamber of Commerce some years ago, and I think we had a bit of fun, didn't we, Robert, in those days?
Yeah, we certainly did, Bill. Yeah,
that's right. In one of our previous podcasts, Mark, you remember we did an interview with Fergal Coleman?
Yep.
And Rob and Fergal have done a lot of work in that community. And so, Rob, welcome, and it's great to hear from you.
Thanks very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
That's right.
So, Rob, we always start with this question. Where did you go to primary school?
Very good. So I was born of I suppose, a mixed immigrant family. My father was from the Northern Ireland, and my mother was actually born in Indonesia. However, she's of Dutch. Dutch descent.
Oh, good mix.
And her parents moved and immigrated to Fremantle, and that's where I was born, in Fremantle. And then up the road was a little primary school called Richmond Primary School, which that's where I went to school.
A good part of the world, Fremantle.
Yeah.
Well, Mark's got a son over there who's a paramedic. And
nice.
he finds every excuse under the sun to get over there.
Visit there. So out of primary school, high school, still in Fremantle?
Then to Murdoch for high school, and then I did some studies at Bentley, which was a college for hospitality, and then not soon after worked with Hyatt Hotels and as a casual, and then went to live in Ireland for a couple of years.
So what? Just going back slightly, Rob. While you were at school, did you always want to work in hospitality? Was that always in your head?
I don't know. I was encouraged to work from an early age. So my first job was in Coles, doing the rotisserie chickens, which ironically are still very popular today.
Oh, so you're a chicken chef, is that right?
Yeah. So dim sims, chips, and rotisserie chicken. So, but I think I was quite. I had a little bit of the Irish hospitality in me, so I could talk to people.
Yep.
And I think the combination of that and need to work. I did try to go to university, and it lasted probably a month.
Yep.
And I was working with the Hyatt at the time, but so I felt that I always had to get that higher education, and because I didn't have it, I think that was one of the drivers behind my career, really.
That's interesting, Rob, because down here in Geelong we've got the Gordon School, of course, and they've just spent millions on doing up their culinary school. And in fact, we interviewed one of the apprentices there last year, and it's a great asset to Geelong, that college, I can tell you, it really is. So you started off the Hyatt. So what was your first job at the Hyatt in Perth?
I was working as a barman, and then in Perth, and then I went away and I came back, and then I got serious, and then I got a full-time job with Hyatt, and after a couple of years I was the restaurant manager, and then after a couple of years out I was shipped off with Hyatt to Canberra, which was interesting.
Yep.
And I ran the Parliament House of Australia. We had the contract to run the catering in Parliament House, and I was the catering manager there, which was a great experience for a young fella to learn about politics and to meet politicians and to understand there are no rocket scientists in the world, including politicians. They're just people, and they're some good people, really good people, work really hard, and some of them probably not as not as diligent as the others. But a great experience to work in Parliament House and to become, not knowing much about politics when you walk in, and hanging off every word of question time when you walk out. It was a great educational experience for me.
And
as well.
Hyatt also sent you off to Macau. Is that correct?
Yeah, so after that, we was sent to Macau, and I landed on September 11, and I watched
Wow. Goodness
11 on the telly in on my first night in Macau. I did think it was sort of sight unseen with Hyatt. You sort of, you look at everything online, and back then, and they don't send you to say, "Oh, do you want to go or not?" It's sort of like, "Hey, we got a job in Macau. Do you want it?" And normally you say yes, and that's it, and off you go. The hotel was a 20-year-old hotel, so it was well kept, but it wasn't the newest thing in town. And it was in Taipa Island, which at the time was undeveloped and not the centre of Macau. It was pretty raw. It was pretty rough. There was no casinos. Well, there were no American casinos, and Las Vegas Strip was essentially, or the Cotai Strip back then was a floodplain with not a soul on it. So it was a very different Macau, but I loved every minute of it. It was a great experience.
How long were you there for, Rob?
Well, I was there for 2 years, and we had 2 boys by then, and then we thought living in China. You realise there are no rules, right? So there's no EPA, and you'd sit there in the afternoon, and it's a beautiful day, and grey clouds would roll in, but the grey clouds weren't weather. The grey clouds were pollution, and at some stage you start thinking, is this good for my children, or am I doing the right thing? Culturally, it was a great experience. Loved every minute of it.
Did you pick up the language?
We did. The GM's wife would teach us. We had an American GM he's the son of a Swiss banker, and he'd only ever worked he went from school to Lucerne hotel school, and then he was employed by Hyatt as a corporate trainee. So it was an interesting character because he was only ever worked in Asia. He spoke fluent Cantonese and also Putonghua, and he married a local wife, and so she would teach us Cantonese, which was good. I mean, we knew we knew the gist of things, but I'm not too sure I mastered the tones at all. Really.
So, Rob, working for the Hyatt Group, I guess I got to ask what am I trying to say? What leadership lessons did you learn, or what business lessons did you learn by working with the Hyatt organisation?
Well, a great question. Back then, American organisations, were very, very structured, very organised. They had a very detailed, or they had big HR departments, and they would put you through courses. So the Myers-Briggs, courses, and all about yourself, and the red circles and the green, all those. We would do that regularly, so we would measure ourselves and then learn what to do, and because you were consistently in an environment with a structure around you, e.g. a HR department, and you did these courses regularly, those tools were invaluable. You learned that you had to manage people different ways, and different people were at different levels of their development and therefore had to be treated differently. Highly competent people needed to be treated differently than people that had just started, or incompetent people, we would say, or consciously incompetent. And we would, so I was exposed to this structure of leadership, and then I was given the chance to do it. They sent me to Asia, and then when the GM's away, I'm sitting there as the only expat with 800 staff, and in the middle of Macau, and they did the same at the at Parliament House. I had to front up to Senate estimates and defend why we didn't have Australian tea.
Good fun.
It was crap because it was crap and it was over expensive. And at the same time, then I'd have to defend why is that our wine is so expensive, and So I think I was, I was fortunate enough that they had large structures. I don't think Hyatt hotels in Australia have those structures anymore, personally. I think Australia's got a very high labour cost. That all then filters back to efficiencies, and I think the hotel industry is a lot different than it used to be.
Yep. So you obviously left Macau. Where did you go from Macau?
I went back to Perth, and I was engaged to be part of the opening team of the Perth Convention Centre, which was
brilliant.
The biggest thing happening in Perth at that stage from a hospitality point of view. It opened. Then I was number 2. The GM that ran it, left, and by the stage that he left, the media was really jumping on the convention centre as a white elephant.
Yeah.
It was a unique business as such that at that stage most convention centres in Australia were government funded or state funded.
Yep.
Because they brought in tourism dollars and business events. But this wasn't. This was a straight lease. So Spotless leased this off the Wiley Group, and as such, it needed to make a return. And Spotless is not a patient corporate entity. So as soon as it didn't make money in the first year, they started, and probably wrongly so, started going to government with cap in hand. That didn't go down well with the government because the government had changed, and the one that built it weren't the ones in power. And so then they said, Rob, you can run it. And I spent the first year running around to the treasurer and everyone that I'd see and just tell them a positive story.
It's a great building.
The narrative, which was an interesting lesson in itself because, the biggest issue with that business was public perception, really.
Yeah.
And we had to change the narrative. It made money then, and I spent I think 4 or 5 years running that, and it's still successful to this day to run the business and try and maintain that quality and the values that Epicure as a catering business had at the beginning. So that business ran a whole bunch of in the end, it ran a whole bunch of external events and also stadiums and venues. So Melbourne Town Hall, Brisbane Town Hall, and all the Birdcage catering, Grand Prix catering, Australian Open, President's Cup. So it was quite an extensive
big events.
Yeah, big events, big business at the time. Well put together and a good business from the point of view that we also had all the contracts to run all the stadiums, and the event season offset the stadium season. So we had big stadium teams that we could utilise to run the events, and it was quite an efficient business and big volume. I think at the peak, when all the stadiums were rolled in, the hospitality division was doing around 280 odd million.
Wow.
In business. We also ran stadiums in New Zealand as well. And basically that I did that until 2015. Private equity took on Spotless, and they changed out the crews, and that's when I started my consultancy. So I've been doing consultancy for nearly 10 years now.
And Rob, around about that time is probably when I got to first know you. You got actively involved with the Irish Australian Chamber of Commerce. How did that come about, and what did you do there?
Yeah, I was approached by a gentleman named Paul Moynes, who was the vice chair at the time. He had recently put in a new CEO. The chamber had very little money in the bank, and it had, I think, nearly gone broke. and Paul put together a new younger committee, which I was one of them. Fergal was one. There was a number of others that were also, that small group and Barry had a really defined and I think unified vision, and we basically went about and we put in mentoring programs, we put in an awards program, we built up the large marquee event, which is their St Patrick's Day event, and then we spread the chamber around Australia, and then we also opened an office of the chamber in Dublin. And when we did the Dublin opening, I was president at the time, which I was lucky to be, and I went to the old Parliament House in Dublin with the support of the Australian Embassy, and we opened up the chamber, and it's still doing really well in Dublin, and it still goes in Australia as well to this day. But we're no longer involved directly. I'm a lifetime member, and we had a great time with the chamber. But we sort of moved on to the Celtic Club.
Yeah, well, I'll remind you, Rob, I'm also a lifetime member.
Right? There we go.
Of the chamber. There we go. An honorary one, I might admit.
Yeah,
but look, I just want to change track for a minute, because every day we read in the press about the hospitality industry, and down here in Geelong, where we're based, we see hospitality venues sort of falling over every week. We know the pubs are struggling. Just generally, there's a lot of negative press, and of course the economy, is real. We can't deny that. What are you finding the current state of the hospitality industry?
Well, I think the reality is that we one thing that strikes me is interesting. So if I employ someone in a business in an admin role, right? Basically, the scrutiny on those admin staff, and this covers a large amount of industries, is very little. The way their award structures are very loose. Yet you go to the hospitality industry, and it's one of the most complex awards in the world. And the reality is, it's not. We're at this point in time now where the cost of hospitality doing business has left very little margin for people. So there's a very small margin of tolerance for any business variation. So people are wanting high leases. We're paying top dollar for staff, and it's getting worse and worse and worse every time you look around. And then we have this real drop in demand, and the drop in demand is happening a number of ways. Number one, drinking habits have changed with the younger, or younger people are drinking less. They drink. There's more of a healthy focus. So they drink less, and they drink zero alcohol beers, and when they go out, they don't go out for massive sessions. So that there's a cultural change, and then there's this economic shift of, when people go out for something to eat, they might have had an entree and a main. Now they'll just have a main. So there's definitely been a half or a spend per head impact. So the bar and the restaurant's still open. We still pay our lease, and we still have to turn the heating on and pay the council rates and clean the building and wash the glasses and do the sanitary changes in the toilets and do all these things which are a serious cost to a business, and all those costs are going up, but people are spending less, and that's a fact. The people in the high-end restaurants in Flinders Lane will tell you that. People come in, they've still got demand, they're still full, but they're spending half the money.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And we're not paying half the costs.
Yeah,
you know?
it's interesting that, Rob, just my dealings with sort of local restaurants and cafes, they're saying that where people would come in and order an entree each, now they'll order one entree and share it. It's cutting back the spend, but they've still got as many people in there, so they've still got to wash up, they've still got to man the place, there's still the demand on service, but the income's not matching what their expenses are. So
no, and we work a lot with brokers, and the amount of businesses that are for sale are just it's ridiculous. And good businesses, businesses that might turn over 25 kilos of coffee, a good cafe, turns over 25. They're good businesses, but they can't be supported anymore. The numbers just don't add up. And we can only charge so much for a pizza, only charge so much for a coffee.
So your business, Rob.
Yep.
Alto Cibum.
Yep. Which is high food in Greek.
Okay.
Latin.
All right.
Latin, really.
Very good. Yeah. Okay. So what do you do? How do people get in touch with you? Can you provide to folk in the hospitality industry?
Yes. So we work with a lot of architects and developers and business operators and I suppose corporates that food and beverage is not their core business. So we will do tenders for the zoos we'll do a food and beverage master plan for, zoos, stadiums, councils, town halls, schools, universities. So we help them plan their depth, breadth, cuisine, price positioning, location and engagement styles of their food and beverage product. And then we help them find operators. We do operator tenders and expressions of interest, and then we'll help developers, fully plan hotel developments, resort developments, and support them with food and beverage business plans, labour demands, drivers, and market analysis. So we're across a number of industries. We find ourselves really largely helping, developers, architects, and stakeholders that are not so confident, or they have a food and beverage experience that is part of their portfolio, but it's not actually operated by them. So anything that outsourcing and outsourced environments, hosted environments, airports, train stations, travel. So we're across a lot of different industry sectors. Largely offering the same thing. We'll also do kitchen design if it's part of the project, but it's not our focus. We more offer strategy and business planning services, really.
And the website is
altocibum.com, it's most of our business is referrals, word of mouth. Type in food and beverage, consultant. We come up in Melbourne. We come up on the first page. We're easy to be found.
Now, the other place we haven't touched on is the Celtic Club. So, tell us a bit about the Celtic Club. How did you get involved? What is it? Where is it?
So the Celtic Club is Australia's oldest cultural club. I think it started in the 1800s, and it's been in a number of locations. Most recently, it was in Queen Street, and it was the building itself, and the air rights were sold off to a developer. And then it's been searching for a venue for 5 years. It purchased the Limerick Arms as an asset, but another operator operates that, so it owns that asset and leases it out to another operator.
That's the one in South Melbourne, Rob. Is that right?
That's in South Melbourne. I was involved as the treasurer for a period of time, probably about 3 years ago, and that they hadn't found a permanent home. And then a new, I suppose, revamped committee contacted us and said, look, can you put a business plan together for a new venue? get a short list of a bunch of venues that are on the market, help us negotiate the purchase, and then help us, renovate and get it ready as the new club. And that's what we did. And we're still involved operationally, bedding down the operation. It's the new club, is located in 29 Brunswick, or Sydney Road, Brunswick, which ironically years ago was an Irish pub called Bridie's O'Reilly's. We took it over the lease from AVC, which owns a bunch of pubs in Melbourne. We renovated it with the brief of creating an Irish pub that's not a kitsch Irish pub.
Yep.
And actually, bringing in a way that a little bit of that Brunswick warmth back into the pub. It was very bright and airy before, and we spent quite a lot of time and money redefining both levels, and part of that was to reposition, I suppose, people's perception of hospitality of the Celtic Club. I mean, it was an old venue before, had gaming. We no longer have gaming, so we purposely created a food and beverage product that is a bit more elevated. We're a gastro pub. We make our own breads. We make our own dough. We make our own sauces. We don't have a traditional deep fried menu that some pubs offer.
Yep.
We do a great roast, so you can see that from a dining point of view, the business is good. It's strong. Every dinner period, then Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sundays are all strong, and the business is probably doing well considering we're in the depths of winter.
Yep.
We need to continue to populate upstairs. We have a number of club events happening every month that we invite club members and non-club members along to, interest events, talks, meet and greets. We do choir, a pub choir once a month. We do ukulele night once a month. We might increase that actually to once a week. And then we have a number of sessions playing throughout the week. We have one on Fridays from 1 to 6. Traditional session players come in and play at the corner of the bar. We have one every second Thursday at night, starting at 7. And then we have the kids do the session, or younger players do a session on the first Sunday of every month in the pub as well.
Yeah, fantastic.
So, so we thought, what we found, if you have to give people a reason to come.
Yep.
Be that entertainment, but people are really interested in culture at the moment. We had Kaylee dancing upstairs. We had about 30 coming for that yesterday. So people want to get off their bum and do stuff. We just need to give them something to do.
Rob, how many members in the Celtic Club now?
We have around 800.
Yep.
So it grows around 40 to 50 every month now. And I think we've had 350 odd since we've opened the doors in March of the new club.
That's fantastic.
So we're definitely appealing to a new cohort, and actually reappealing to some older people that were involved in the old club.
That might be me, because I've just joined, but I haven't been there yet. Oh, I haven't been there yet.
Yes. So and it's good value. I mean, it's $50 a year, and you get 10% off food and beverage. I mean, one good night, you pay your money back. So,
but anyone can walk into the pub, or do you have to
correct.
be a member?
Yeah.
Correct.
I mean, we had to, now that we didn't have gaming, we had to reduce all the barriers, and that is why the pub is actually called the Wild Geese Hotel.
Yep.
So it appears to be on the outside a pub that we don't have any barriers between us and any of the consumers.
Yep.
People in the know will come in and work out that it's a club where you can sign on in line, that there's a little kiosk there where you can sign on. So it's all pretty accessible.
Well, Mark and I are coming up for lunch with you soon.
Yeah, we'll come and do
We've made that promise because we were supposed to do this at your venue, but we're doing it by phone today. But at least we got it done.
It is.
Yeah, correct.
And Rob, I'm amazed that somebody that started their life turning chickens in the rotisserie at Coles is where they are today. I think it's a fantastic journey. So brilliant.
Yeah,
well done.
It does. I'm getting a bit too old for this, so I was pumping out the beers on Saturday, I got to say I'm starting to feel my age, but I do enjoy it. I got to say.
Fantastic. So thank you, Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Great to talk to you.
No, thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.